Hello, welcome to another Becoming a Modern Man. I am playing Grixis Death's Shadow, and this time we are playing against a sort of a slightly new deck, I suppose, of one I've only really seen recently. Based around Hollow One, it's kind of like the Dredge shell, but instead it runs Flame Blade Adept and some other Vengevine and Hollow One. Has a lot of discard spells and uses those to sort of mount a sort of substantial board presence and hitting hard. You'll see it in action anyway in the video, but yeah. So let's get this game underway. Opponent leads with a Bloodstained Mire, cracks for a mountain, and plays a Grim Lavamancer. So not entirely sure what he is on at this moment in time. I'm kind of thinking he's Burn, to be quite honest, which makes these 3 Street Wraiths that we've got in hand a little awkward. So, just going to lead with the Delta, because we're going to need a Watery Grave. And just going to Inquisition my opponent. Oops, I sped through that a little bit too quickly. So, you see our opponent isn't Burn, which obviously gives us some good information. So he has Insolent Neonate, a Grim Lavamancer, and a bunch of cards we can't take with Inquisition. So he's got the Hollow One, Street Wraith, Become Events. I mean, duplicate and double, and like a second Grim Lavamancer doesn't do a whole lot for him. So I think we just took the Neonate. Menace is kind of annoying, and it obviously can potentially let him activate Dredge and various other things. I'm not sure if there actually are any Dredge cards in his deck, but I think generally that's the more frustrating card. So I ended up taking that, although, you know, our options were somewhat limited. So past our opponent, he cycles his Street Wraith and the second Street Wraith, then hits a Faithless Looting, which allows him to cast the Hollow One for the nothing. So that's kind of, at least the vague basis of the deck, is that you try and discard multiple cards in a turn, which then lets you cast Hollow One for nothing. With the converted mana cost of 5, Hollow One can't be hit by Fatal Push, which obviously makes it very good in the current format. And obviously it's quite substantially sized. And as you can see, he managed to pay that on turn 2 for nothing, so that's pretty good. And obviously puts a fairly substantial threat on the board. Let's see if we can look at what he discarded. So yeah, more discard spells there gone into the graveyard after the Faithless Looting. So yeah, so his Grim Lavamancer's fairly well stocked for things to throw at our face, and he hasn't played a second land as of yet. But he does have a fairly substantial board presence. Now we know that I'm not facing down Burn, we can use these Street Wraiths a bit more, but we do have a slight issue in that obviously our opponent's got a fairly substantial board presence as it stands. I'd say generally I think we're in a fairly good position against this deck because our threats are bigger than Hollow One. Hollow One's a 4/4, we've got Tasigur, which is a 4/5, Gurmag Angler, which is a 5/5, and we've got Death Shadow as well, which generally you would think would be bigger than that. So we're not in a terrible position. I'm going to cycle these Street Wraiths. I found a Death Shadow, which is very nice, and we can play that down as a 5/5. And then we're just going to pass the turn. Opponent plays a Stomping Ground. Main phases a Become Immense. Not entirely sure why. Seems a little odd. But I mean, I suppose that could have killed us if we hadn't blocked. I don't really understand why he main phased it though. But we had the Stubborn Denial there ready to counter that. So turned out fine for us. Just going to pass the turn here. We've got options available with the Snapcaster. We could also Fatal Push his Grim Lavamancer, though he's got another one in hand, I believe. It doesn't look like he discarded that. So questionable value in that, I guess. Knocks us down to 6. Faithless Looting into another hollow one. But he still doesn't have any good attacks. I'm going to push the Grim Lavamancer now. It is kind of a nuisance, so we don't want to die to that, or that plus lightning bolts and things. I'm not entirely sure what his deck list looks like, but there's a potential that he has some sort of burn spells in there. So I'm going to play my Tasigur now. Get rid of the Inquisition, because if we can repeatedly use Tasigur to bring back cards like Fatal Push and Stubborn Denial, that'll definitely leave us in a good position. Opponent flashes back a Faithless Looting, or tries to. I'm going to Snapcaster Stubborn Denial here, and just prevent our opponent from drawing anything further. It also gets us one of these Snapcasters onto the board, which allows us to attack here. So we can attack with both our guys now with the Death Shadow at 9/9. So that's lethal. So our opponent's going to be forced to block here, and then we've still got a blocker in reserve. And we're on 4, so we're safely out of lightning bolt range. Our opponent flashes back his Faithless Looting, but doesn't find anything. And yeah, that wraps up the game. So yeah, ended up in a fairly good position after all. As I say, our creatures are quite substantially bigger than Hollow One, so the fact that we managed to find those and get them down put us in a fairly good position against his deck. So let's go into game 2. See what we can do here. So this is our opener, and it all seems pretty good. Leyline obviously coming in from the sideboard here. Graveyard Hike very good against him. Like I say, Vengevine and I believe Bloodghast and are other cards that the deck runs, and obviously just getting rid of those advantages. Grim Lavamancer obviously gets turned off by this, and various other cards that the deck may be running are turned off, so that's obviously a very good card to have in our opening hand here. Rest of the hand is okay. We've got some threats, as I say, which will be great if we can stick them, and we've got a removal spell, so we can deal with at least one of his threats. This is Flameblade Adept, which is another one of the sort of, I guess, fairly unique cards the deck runs. It can become fairly ridiculous with like Burning Inquiry and stuff. Becomes very powerful. Also, Menace is not to be underestimated. It's very difficult to hold back 2 creatures to block, so they can sort of hit fairly hard with this guy if it gets going. Fortunately, with the Bloodstained Mire here, pass the turn. I'm just going to cycle a Street Wraith, which pumps up his Flame Blade. He's just going to attack us for 2. Follow up with a Grim Lavamancer, which obviously isn't very exciting thanks to our Leyline. I'm going to fetch up a Watery Grave. I'm not too concerned about being blown out and killed. Become Immense is another card that's obviously a lot worse now, thanks to Leyline. He's going to have to pay the full cost for it if he wants to cast it at any point. So I'm feeling fairly secure in our position. We're just going to play our Scalding Tarn here, obviously leave up Terminate. Let's go attack. I'll just let it happen. I suppose we could just have killed the Flame Blade, but him attacking us makes our Death Shadow that much bigger, so I think we're happy to take the damage. I'm going to attack with a Flame Blade here. I'm going to Terminate it. And it turns out our opponent has a Lightning Bolt for the Death Shadow, so obviously we didn't see Lightning Bolt last game, so we didn't know that he had it. Had we, maybe we would have played that a little bit differently and not allowed the Death Shadow to be a 3/3. But you live and learn. So we've still got a threat to play here. We can run out the Angler, which is obviously a nice and sizable 5/5. Opponent's got Vengevine, which isn't very exciting, obviously. Our Angler is obviously bigger than it, and we have the Ley Line, which prevents it from being a recurable threat. Going to attack here, see if our opponent wants to double block, and then we would have terminated one of his creatures and let the Angler live. Let's go attack here. I'm going to terminate the Vengevine. I think he hard casts Become Immense, which is pretty impressive. I suppose we probably should have factored that in and maybe just waited to see what he did. Also, what I don't do here, which I should have done, is just drop in the Snapcaster to block, which was available because we were still on attackers. So yeah, we've kind of played it slightly riskier than we had to do there. We could have dropped the Snapcaster, as I say, blocked there and not taken 7, because now we're on 2 and our opponent does apparently run lightning bolts, so definitely should have dropped the Snapcaster to prevent us going so low. Opponent's going to keep attacking with this Grim Lavamancer. I'm going to Snapcaster now and just going to block. Our opponent's on 3, so he needs to play a creature to block the Angler, and I think I'm happy enough to trade, so I just want to see what he can run out here instead. I mean, we risk losing the value of not being able to use the Terminate, but to be honest, if he doesn't play any creatures, then he would have been dead, so I think that was the best way to play it. As it turns out, he has 2 creatures to drop it in, so that play worked out very well, and we were able to kill off the Flameblade Adept, because there was a potential there for him to actually just kill us. We draw a Fatal Push though, as it turns out, so we managed to win the game there and then, and our opponent doesn't get another turn. So yeah, that worked out all very well. Like I say, I think heavily favoured in this matchup. Generally, all our creatures are pretty much bigger than theirs, apart from Snapcaster Mage, obviously, but which has its own uses and is also a way of recurring removal, which is very good. And yeah, sideboard we've got Graveyard Hate, so yeah, I can't see this being a terribly favourable match for our opponent, and definitely one that we should be looking at winning, I think, at least most of the time, just because our threats are bigger, and it's very difficult for them to overpower us. So it's really just, I suppose, looking out for shenanigans for the most part, in terms of menace creatures plus Become Immense and large pump spells, all getting burnt out, I suppose. So yeah, we did run it a little bit fine, going down to 2 life, and we probably should have protected our Death Shadow a little bit better, but despite those slight misplays, we managed to wrap this one up and finish off the opponent.